Trouble in Paradise, Part 3, Ghost in the Machine. Baxter had no sense of how much time had passed. His body moved without thought, swaying to the rhythm as sweat trailed down his back and chest. A strange calm had settled over him, flooding his senses. Every sound was sharp, every light too bright, but it felt good, better than good. The pounding of his heart echoed in his ears. A warmth that had nothing to do with sweat spread through him. Baxter's gaze drifted toward the bar. The engaged couple were still there, laughing, fingers laced together. Before, the sight of them cut something deep in him. But now, he felt nothing. No hurt, no envy, just a smooth, blissful calm that settled over everything. Baxter turned and found Leo dancing, watching him. Leo's smile widened as he moved closer, their faces nearly touching. "Keep looking at me like that. People might think you're in love." Their noses brushed, and prickles ran across Baxter's skin. Leo's hands slid up his arms, settled on his shoulders. Baxter's head felt light, his thoughts clear. His eyes fell to Leo's lips, and before he could help himself, he kissed him. The lights around them pulsed in a violent rhythm as Leo kissed back, pulling him closer. A longing stirred in Baxter's chest, and the kiss deepened until Leo broke away, whispering against his ear, "Do you want to go somewhere?" Baxter hesitated. Then the thought struck him. "How about my place? Do you have roommates?" "No, just me." Leo's grin flashed. "Perfect." He pulled out his phone, tapped on the Uber app, and held it out. "Put your address in." Baxter typed it in and returned the phone. A chime confirmed their ride. Leo paid for their drinks, and minutes later, they waited at the curb until a black SUV rolled to a stop. Leo checked the license plate against his phone, then opened the door for Baxter to climb in. The SUV hummed onto I-95 and down State Road 112. Baxter gazed out at the skyline, neon lights rippling across the windows. The bass from the car speakers pulsed through him. Leo shifted closer. His hand slid from Baxter's thighs to his waist and pressed a kiss against his neck. Baxter turned, smiling, and their lips met again. They stayed locked together the entire drive. When the SUV finally merged off the highway, it glided toward a glass-sheathed tower. Bright lettering rose from lush greenery at its entrance, Maurice Residences. The car turned into the covered driveway. Leo and Baxter stumbled out, faces flushed from laughter and kissing. After thanking the driver, they slipped through the glowing front doors of the building. The lobby ceiling stretched upward, where glimmering glass fixtures hung like suspended stars. Their light illuminated the colorful artwork that adorned the walls. Passing the front desk, Baxter gave the worker a polite nod and guided Leo through the maze of beige sofas toward the elevator. It chimed softly and slid open for them. They stepped into the empty elevator, and Baxter pulled out his keychain, pressing the smart key against the reader. A flash of green appeared, followed by a soft beep of acceptance. He pressed the button for the 19th floor, and the elevator began to ascend. Through the glass panels that wrapped around the elevator, Baxter watched Leo's reflection as he pulled out his phone and tapped a screen. "What?" Baxter asked, smiling. "Just trying to let my friend know not to wait up," Leo said. He stared at his phone, then scoffed. "No service." He slipped his phone back into his pocket and smirked at Baxter. "Guess he'll figure it out," and gently wrapped his fingers around Baxter's before pulling him in. The door to Baxter's apartment swung open, and had barely closed before Leo pressed him against it. Their mouths crashed together, and their hands tugged at each other's tops. The apartment pulsed with the growing heat of their intertwined bodies. Baxter pulled up Leo's shirt and tossed it onto the kitchen counter. Leo pulled himself away to kick his shoes off. Baxter did the same, balancing on one foot at a time to take his boots off. There was breathless laughter between them as they watched each other struggle to take their shoes off. After Baxter finally got his boots off, he kicked them to the side. He pulled off his vest and tossed it next to Leo's shirt. Leo pulled Baxter back into his arms. He was met with the warmth of his skin and the pressure of their muscles intertwined together. Baxter pressed his face against Leo's neck, instinctively drawn to the warmth and the smell. His cologne and Leo's sweat lingered in the air, a mix of spicy and sweet. Baxter inhaled deeply, ready to drown in it. But then there was nothing, not a trace of sweat, cologne, or skin. Just air. Baxter tried again, inhaling slowly near Leo's collarbone. His nose brushed against stubble. Still no smell. The air smelled flat and sterile. Baxter blinked. A small crease formed between his brows. "You okay?" Leo murmured, as his fingers teased at Baxter's waistband. Baxter blinked back into focus. Yeah, I'm good." He began to pull Baxter's pants down, but Baxter hesitated. Leo froze. Did I do something wrong? Was something wrong? Baxter thought to himself. Had he imagined it? He wanted to pull back, but Leo's hands were on his hips, warm and grounding. Baxter exhaled and pushed the worry into the back of his mind. He kissed Leo again, harder. In response, Leo slid his pants down. Baxter stirred in the dark. The sheets of his bed were tangled at his waist. He gazed up at the ceiling, allowing his eyes to adjust. The apartment was still and quiet. He reached over and clicked on the small lamp beside his bed. A faint amber glow spread across the walls. Leo lay on his side. His bare back rose and fell with each slow breath. Baxter didn't move. His body ached faintly with pleasure. But there was another sensation somewhere deep in his stomach. Confusion. A quiet unease. His mind wandered back to earlier that night, back to when he smelled Leo's skin, but was met with nothing. No smell. The air was only flat and sterile. Baxter blinked the unease away. Leo's shoulder twitched in his sleep. Baxter smiled. He wanted this to be more than just one night, more than a memory he thought back on during his sleepless nights. He reached his hand out, fingertips hovering over Leo's shoulder, before he paused. Instead, Baxter pulled his hand away and allowed his eyes to wander. His eyes traced the line of Leo's shoulders and the scratch marks down his back. He studied the way Leo's hair curled at the nape of his neck and the soft mess of his hair. Then Baxter saw it. Just behind Leo's ear, a faded tattoo barely visible in the dim light. He leaned in closer. It was a familiar tattoo, a discreetly placed palm tree in black ink. Baxter's smile vanished. He knew it, as surely as he knew his own name. It was the same tattoo he woke up with after completing the transfer. The same tattoo that hid behind his own ear. Baxter sat up in bed. Was Leo like him? Did he know about him? His heart began to beat louder in his chest. Baxter's mind wandered back to when he stood in the waiting room, holding the clipboard. Was Leo's name on that clipboard? His mind jogged through the long list of previous appointments and their names, but he couldn't remember any of them. Leo stirred. He mumbled something unintelligible and shifted under the sheets. Baxter didn't move. He just stared. The warmth of the moment slowly drifted away, and in replacement, a cold weight sat in his chest. Then Baxter noticed something was wrong. Black flecks began to pepper the edges of his vision. He held out his arms, peering down at the blurred shapes that made up his hands. His eyebrows furrowed and rubbed his palms against his eyes. When he pulled them away, his vision cleared, and what he saw made him gasp. Baxter was no longer in his bedroom. Instead, a black void stretched beyond him. There was no sky, no horizon, only a boundless expanse of black. His bed had vanished. He stood, alone. Taking a cautious step forward, he felt the void like cold glass beneath his feet. It hummed silently, as if it were alive. A wet, squelching sound pierced through the silence. Baxter's head snapped toward the noise. Just ahead, beneath the black surface, a figure hung suspended in midair. Then its limbs began to twitch. Slowly, it pushed itself upward, rising toward Baxter. Then the ground shivered, rippling as if the void itself were breathing. A hand broke through from below, then another. Its knuckles cracked and bent at grotesque angles as they clawed their way upward. A dark shape broke through the surface. Two eyes rose up, wide and glistening. Its gaze locked onto Baxter. Goosebumps erupted up and down his arms, fast, like a time lapse. The thing lay only 10 feet away. The figure in the ground shifted slightly. Its head twitched. Its eyes were filled with fury, hating Baxter and radiating malevolence. Baxter made a noise, a sound of revulsion. He called out, "Hello?" The emptiness swallowed his voice and gave back no answer. Then, a low, quiet response whispered through the silence. "Found you." There was a prickly feeling inside the back of Baxter's head, like a silk scarf had brushed against his skull. Then the ground trembled beneath his feet. Without warning, an ear-splitting headache erupted in his skull. He winced. The pain was unimaginable. He dug his fingers into his temples and let out a scream. Baxter's eyes flew open. He gasped for air. His bare body jerked as though hot oil had spilled down his back. Clutching his head from the pain, he stumbled out of bed. From beside him came another scream. Leo shot upright, thrashing in confusion. His legs tangled in the sheets, and he toppled, face first onto the floor, with a heavy thud. Baxter searched his surroundings, his apartment. The lamp on his bedside table was on. A weak amber glow spread across the room, painting the walls in soft light. Everything was okay. He inhaled deeply, the pounding in his skull beginning to ease. A groan drew Baxter's attention, and he peered over the bed. Leo pushed himself off the floor, blood streaming from his nose and down his chest. Baxter gasped, pressing a hand over his mouth. Leo staggered into the bathroom and twisted on the faucet. The sudden hiss of water filled the silence. Baxter steadied himself, then followed. At the doorway, he stopped short. Leo crouched over the sink, rinsing blood off his face. When he noticed Baxter, he snapped the faucet shut and shot him a furious look. "What the fuck was that?" Leo spat, blood and water trickling down his chin. "I'm so sorry," Baxter murmured. Leo ripped toilet paper from the roll, stuffed it against his nose, and glared at him. "Is there anything I can do?" Baxter asked softly. "Do you want an ice pack?" "Just get out," Leo muttered, voice sharp with anger. Baxter retreated down the hall, rubbing his temples. His body felt restless, his lips parched. He opened the kitchen cabinet, pushing past cough drops and vitamins until his hand knocked over a bottle of flu syrup. It clattered to the counter and rolled to the floor. Baxter grabbed the Tylenol, twisted the cap, and shook out the last pill. He swallowed it dry, wincing. From the fridge, Baxter pulled out a bottle of orange juice. He began to drink deeply, anticipating the taste of sweetness. But then he pulled the lid away from him, looking at the bottle, confused. He took another sip, slower this time, and swirled the juice on his tongue. Nothing. It tasted like sterile air. Was he getting sick? Baxter paused, checking himself. No sore throat, no congestion, no cough. A sudden cry echoed from the bathroom. Baxter shoved the unease aside, yanked an ice pack from the freezer, and hurried back. Leo hunched over the sink, a swollen red welt rising on his forehead. Baxter held out the ice pack, but Leo snatched it from his hand with startling force. Baxter recoiled. Leo pressed the pack gently against his skin, wincing as his breaths came, slow and shallow. Baxter stood beside Leo, shifting his weight, uncertain of what to do. His eyes traced the blood, splattered across the sink, dotted on the floor, streaked along the toilet lid. Amid the mess sat a burned-out candle. He picked it up, reading the faded label, coconut vanilla. Bringing it closer, Baxter inhaled deeply. Nothing. No sweetness, no warmth, only the sterile scent that had clung to him since he woke up. Something inside him was wrong. Can you smell this? Baxter asked, holding the candle out toward Leo. Leo shot him a sharp glare and shoved the candle away. Without a word, he turned the faucet back on, cupped his hands, and drank before spitting water into the sink. Baxter's gaze wandered. His eyes fell past the slope of Leo's neck, into the tattoo behind his ear, the small palm tree. Then the harsh sound of water splashing snapped him out of it. In the mirror, Leo's reflection caught him. Could he tell what Baxter had been staring at? When did you get that tattoo? Baxter asked, trying to keep his voice even. Leo stilled. His eyes narrowed. What tattoo? The palm tree, Baxter said. Behind your ear. Leo didn't answer at first. He just looked at Baxter, expression unreadable, like he was calculating something. Then he shrugged. Got it forever ago. Drunk night with friends. Didn't mean anything. The lie was flimsy, and Leo had to know it. He turned away before Baxter could respond, brushing past him as he walked back into the bedroom. Leo sank onto the edge of the bed and pressed his palms into his eyes. Silence settled into the room, broken only by his breathing. Baxter lingered in the bathroom doorway, holding his breath. Leo reached for his clothes, scattered across the floor, and began putting them on. Are you leaving? Baxter asked quietly. What does it look like? Leo muttered, sliding into his socks. A spike of desperation shot through Baxter's chest. He couldn't let the night collapse like this. Why don't you stay? He pleaded. I'll drive you to urgent care. They can check your nose. I'll pay for it. I feel awful about what happened. I'm so sorry. Leo's mouth opened to speak, and Baxter's hearing suddenly wavered. Leo's voice stretched and warped. It echoed faintly as if spoken through a tunnel. Baxter's eyebrows narrowed as his hands reached for his ears. He snapped his fingers and heard nothing, except for a humming that grew louder, too loud. His heart thumped loudly in his chest. He closed his eyes and covered his ears when he realized that the ringing didn't come from around him. It was coming from inside his skull. Then the ringing was gone. He could hear Leo's voice clearly again. I don't want to go anywhere where you'll be, Leo said, standing up and sliding back into his jeans. I'm going to call an Uber to take me home. He wrapped his belt around his waist and rummaged through the bed, searching for something. Have you seen my phone? Baxter pointed to the floor, next to the bedside table. Down there. Leo grabbed his phone and switched it on. The screen was black, except for the image of a battery sign. Leo groaned. Great, it's dead. Here, Baxter walked over to his side of the bed. You can use mine. I'll pay for the Uber. He unlocked his phone and handed it to Leo. Leo hesitated, then snatched it out of Baxter's hand without looking at him. Anger rose up in Baxter. He shifted his weight, eyes flicking between Leo's bruised forehead and his clenched jaw. You didn't have to come over if it was going to be like this, he muttered. Leo typed quickly, ignoring him. He handed the phone back with the screen still lit. It's ordered. 15 minutes. Baxter took the phone and set it on his bedside table. Okay, well, you're welcome. Leo dug his fingers into his temples. You want me to thank you for knocking me off the bed and doing this? He pointed to the bump on his forehead. I didn't make you fall on your face. You screamed like you were being murdered. Leo spat. What were you expecting me to do? Roll over and cuddle you? I had a nightmare. Baxter snapped. It was an accident. And so was spending the night over. Leo muttered. Baxter paused, blinking hard. You know, you weren't acting this bothered when you were whining my name into the pillows last night. Leo's head snapped up. Let's not pretend. Last night was about sex. Nothing more. God, you're unbelievable, Baxter said, laughing, hard and humorless. You're acting like you don't care, but you did. Or at least you acted like it. His voice wavered. But sure. Go. Go ahead. Be a coward. Leo scoffed. I'm not a coward. You're just easy to fool. Baxter's hands were trembling so hard his fingers curled into fist, and the words tore out before he could stop them. Then tell me this. Since you're suddenly all about honesty, why lie about the tattoo? Leo stiffened. Baxter didn't give him room to speak. I know what it really is, he pressed, eyes locked onto Leo's. Because it's the same one they gave me. And you looked me dead in the face and acted like it was nothing. So don't stand there, acting like you're above me, like you're somehow better. Because you're not. His voice trembled, but he didn't look away. Leo went completely still. His mouth hung open, eyes bulging wide. Baxter could see it. The recognition. The truth. Then Leo blinked, fast and sharp. The expression of shock vanished, replaced by something harder, more practiced. He spoke with deceptive softness. Your mind must be scrambled from all the molly you took last night, because I don't know what you're talking about. They stared at each other in silence. Then Leo rose, sliding into his shoes, fully dressed now except for his shirt. He snatched his phone from the nightstand and walked out of the bedroom without a word. Baxter followed, stopping just short of the couch as he watched Leo cross the living room. Leo scooped his shirt off the kitchen counter and pulled it over his head. He unlocked the front door and paused in the frame. His head turned slightly, just enough to glance back. Where's the elevator? Baxter hesitated, his throat tight. Make a right down the hallway, then left. Leo nodded once and stepped into the hall, vanishing from Baxter's sight and from his life. Baxter stood frozen, eyes fixed on the closed door. For how long, he couldn't say. All he knew was the dull, sinking weight in his stomach, and the familiar tide of hopelessness rising over him. Baxter drifted back to the bedroom and sank onto the edge of the bed. The sheets still held Leo's warmth. He pulled on a t-shirt and sweatpants, his eyes drawn to the window where rain streaked the glass. A flash of white split the sky, followed by thunder that shook the silence. Yet the silence inside felt louder, thick, oppressive, pressing in on him from all sides. Baxter looked down at his reflection in the black glass of his phone screen, and for the first time, he wondered whose face this had belonged to. He had never stopped and thought about the man who lived in this body, whose pulse he had stolen. But he hadn't stolen it. It was given to him by them. Then another thought, a much more unpleasant one, drifted into his head. She said every body came from a consenting donor. Was that a lie? Was there more to that story he didn't know? Baxter reached for the sheets and wrapped them around himself, not for the warmth, but to feel held by something. There was a deep ache in his body, somewhere in his chest. He let out a shaky breath and lay still. He inhaled deeply, but there was nothing, no trace of scent, only the creeping return of his headache pounding at the edges of his skull. The room spun faintly. A slow, drugged pulse thrummed through the walls. And then the memory came, sharp and blinding, but not his own. Baxter blinked, trying to ground himself, when the room suddenly tilted. His stomach lurched, and his body was thrown forward. He gripped the edges of the sheets and let out a gasp. The walls had begun to melt, and the shadows around him shifted quickly. The thunder of the rain turned into the distant rumble of traffic. Baxter's feet touched solid ground, and he stood, shaking as the blurred shapes around suddenly came into focus. There were cracked pillars on either side of him, and ahead, a bright yellow line separated the concrete platform from the train tracks. He looked down at the cars crawling along Northeast 2nd Avenue and instantly knew where he was, the Miami World Center train station. Baxter turned and spotted a man with blonde curls sitting on a metal bench and froze. It was him. Well, not him exactly, the man whose body he was inhabiting. Hello? Baxter's voice trembled. The man didn't look up. Baxter glanced down at his own hands. His old hands, rough and worn with calluses. His chest tightened. A quiet sniff broke the air. Baxter looked back up. The man on the bench clutched a worn folder in his lap, staring down at his phone. He rubbed his red, swollen eyes. His nose was raw from crying. Baxter stepped closer, standing at the man's side. Are you okay? He asked softly. No response. The man didn't even flinch, as if Baxter wasn't there at all. Baxter leaned in and glanced at the phone screen. An email sat open, the text cold and impersonal. This email is to formally notify you that your rent payment for July 2025 is past due. The rent was due on July 1st, 2025 and has not yet been received. According to the terms on your lease agreement, a late fee of $75 has been applied. The total amount now due is $1,875. Please submit the full payment by July 10th, 2025 to resolve this matter and avoid additional late fees or possible eviction proceedings. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. Sincerely, Property Management Office. Footsteps approached from behind. Then a voice followed, familiar enough to make Baxter spin around. Excuse me, said a woman gently. Her hair was a striking mix of inky black and bleached ivy. Lydia, the nurse who had performed the procedure on him. She stood over the man, her expression tender with concern. He looked up at her, startled, and quickly wiped his face. Baxter waved his hands in confusion, but she didn't see him. I don't mean to intrude, Lydia said, smiling softly. You just look really upset, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. The man gave a sheepish smile and shook his head. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. That's very kind of you. As he shifted, the folder slid from his lap, scattering papers across the platform. Resumes fanned out like fallen leaves. He cursed under his breath and crouched to collect them. Without hesitation, Lydia knelt beside him, helping gather the pages. Thanks, he said quietly, cheeks flushing even redder. Once the last resume was tucked back into the folder, Lydia sat down beside him on the bench. So, she said gently, you're looking for a job? He gave a weak laugh. Trying to. The job market's terrible. I know a lot of people who are struggling right now to get work. She paused, then shook her head. Sorry, I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times. The man nodded silently. I just came back from my third interview today, he muttered, and I don't think any of them went well. It hasn't been going well for a long time. How long have you been looking for? 6 months. Lydia tilted her head, studying him. What's your name? Harlem. She blinked, repeating it to herself before she spoke again. There was a time in my life when I jumped from job to job, searching for something better. That taught me very quickly that corporate justice is often a punchline. She leaned in slightly, her tone softening. People like us, we give so much of ourselves, and it feels like the world doesn't know what to do with us. But that changed after I found my current job, and funny enough, we're actually looking for new hires. Harlem looked up. What kind of position? It's a client services role, she nodded. We have several clients who are looking for participants in a specialized program. Harlem's eyes narrowed. What type of program? Lydia's eyes flicked over him, sharp but brief, assessing him. She smiled. I'd be more than happy to tell you all about our program. Reaching into her pocket, Lydia pulled out a business card. You strike me as someone who doesn't just need work. You need purpose again, she said as she handed it to him. As Harlem lifted the card closer, Baxter leaned in, recognizing it instantly. Against the plain white background, a golden palm tree shimmered in the light. Beneath it, bold black letters read, Are you ready for the body you've always dreamed of? Lydia's voice softened, but still carried weight. In giving you this card, Harlem, I'm giving you a chance. So take some time, think it over, and if you've decided correctly, she smiled, we'll be hearing from you soon. Harlem stared down at the card, lost in thought. Lydia stood and turned toward the stairway. As Baxter followed her with his eyes, another figure appeared, climbing the steps. Leo. They crossed each other mid-step. Leo's eyes widened in recognition. Lydia gave him a small nod, a knowing wink, and continued down the stairs until she vanished from sight. Harlem watched her leave, and for a brief moment his eyes met Leo's. Then he looked back at the card and slid it carefully into his pocket. The scene around Baxter began to warp. The pillars began to melt. Shadows twisted as colors bled into one another. The rumble of traffic dissolved into the soft growl of thunder. Baxter blinked. He was back in bed, clutching his blanket, heart pounding as the rain poured against the window.